Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Russ Jones,
And Brad Kennan here.
and we are wide open.
So, Russ, last week on our episode, we had Ronie Powell,
Yes.
and she is a very interesting guest,
Yeah.
and she's been doing this a long time.
Yes.
So, the suggestion we had was maybe we should do her 2 weeks.
Yeah, we didn't even get into her sighting, the Crittenton, Kentucky
No, we
ordeal.
didn't. No, we did not. But I do believe that first hour that we worked with her, it went by very fast. And like I said, it was kind of, she specializes in habituations. And those squatches come around your houses all the time, and he works with multiple people, so it's not just one family. It happens all over the country, and everybody's a fan until it happens to them. So at this point in time, you want to bring her back?
Sure.
All right,
I always think it's interesting, man. It's in order to be a witness, you have to know what's going on. I always wonder how many people are out there that don't know that they're having something happen. But Ronie was the person to call for many, many years and still works with people.
right. I mean, you think about how many times. I'm sure you had, so you got your farm in Ohio, then you had your other house. When I first met you, you had the house with the 100 acres in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
You have a barn and you set something out. I come back and it's moved. Well, you
Yeah.
don't really think about that. I just forgot, or my wife moved it, or whatever that is. Maybe something's coming around and we just don't even know. So let's go ahead and bring Ronie back in, and we're going to continue this discussion about habituations. Ronie, you're still there?
I'm still here.
All
Hey,
right.
Ronie.
Hey, good to
Back
see
for
you.
more.
Back for more. So the first hour was pretty it was pretty entertaining. I've listened to quite a few podcasts and I've never really heard the stories that you have. Like I said, we've known each other for years. I just know that you make those biscuits. What are they? The cinnamon rolls,
Yes,
the homemade ones.
homemade yeast rolls. Cinnamon
There you
rolls.
go, for breakfast. And I do remember that. So anyway, Russ won't eat them because it's Russ.
That's right.
He's being healthy.
He's being healthy.
But
I'll eat
it's
them
okay it's okay to indulge every now and then.
if he can have them on Sundays, but by Sunday mornings at any conference, he's gone by about 6 a.m. So
True. Now I do have pizza once a week. That's my
Good for you.
indulgence.
it's cauliflower crust.
Ah. No, I want once a week. I want it to be real.
Well, that's
There
good.
you go. I think
That's
great.
good. So, to our listeners, if they did not hear Ronie talk last week, it was a great episode. You guys need to go listen. It's our episode 2 of the Wide Open Research Podcast. This is actually episode 3. It's the second part with Ronie, and she specializes in people that have habituated or habituation situations around their property with Bigfoot. So
that is a topic that actually chose me. It's so interesting how it all happened. That wasn't anything I ever set out to specialize in, but it kept coming to me over and over and over.
now, was the Alabama situation, was that the first, or did you have something before that?
That was the first one.
Okay. So like I said, if anybody wants to listen to the podcast we did last week, or the our episode 2, it was a pretty amazing story. There's a lot going on there. Honestly, I don't know how they could have got through it without being traumatized for the rest of their life, to be honest with you.
They were traumatized, but it was also so interesting. So many of the witnesses that I've worked with, once they get a good look at these beings, they develop an affinity for them to the point that it becomes almost a protective attitude towards them. More interestingly, and this was the last thing I ever would have expected, but during my years of being an investigator and continually being called on to work on or consult on these habituations, we ended up having them come to our farm here where I live in Tennessee. And that was a shocker to me. When it happened, I was floored, and my husband was very shocked.
Had you considered that a possibility before?
Nope.
But okay.
No, not in a million years did I think that would happen.
Because of the location, or
No, it just never entered my mind. And my county is extremely active. In fact, one of the reports that I took back in 2010 was from my county, and it was two kids. Sibylla did the witness sketch on it. It was two kids who had a very curious male that looked like he had a deformed jaw. It's a great drawing. Came out and followed them when they were on a farm that they lease for deer and turkey hunting. There is still activity ongoing on that property to this day. I am still hearing from the leaseholder. I knew the farm owner because my husband and I were always involved in agriculture. We were in the Angus business. My husband trains horses. My husband was president of our Cattlemen's Association, and I knew that farm and the farm owner personally. And to this day, there have been 5 or 6 Class A's on that property, and there's continuous activity.
Class A meaning that it was a clear
visual daytime face-to-face. Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to talk about the Crittenden project at this point in time, or do you want to talk about some more of your history, your other sightings you've had?
So, yes, we'll kind of go that direction. So I don't think it is my place to talk about the Crittenden, the Erickson project. That was taken on by Adrian Erickson, who was an entrepreneur from Canada. And that was an ongoing project for quite a few years. And they ended up, Adrian bought the property that the homeowner owned, where they had been feeding this family group. Dennis Fall was the project coordinator. I don't know if he is under an NDA still or not.
I think he did a really good podcast with Cliff.
Wonderful.
Not too long ago, and it was one of the more interesting podcasts I listened to. So.
Wonderful. Well,
because he was from Colorado too, wasn't he?
He is from Colorado. That's
so he was going from Colorado to Crittenden, Kentucky, which if people don't know where Crittenden, Kentucky is, it is literally 20 minutes from downtown Cincinnati.
Yes.
And I know this for a fact because in the business that I am in, I've actually installed fiber optic cable in Crittenden, Kentucky.
Wow.
And I wish I knew where the house was, because we went along some roads and I was thinking, man, I'm looking around. I'm like, this is, it's not what you think. Cause there's some nice houses. It's kind of rolling hills.
Yep.
It's up and down. There's
lots
farm fields.
Yep.
And you think, well, being a Bigfoot person, I'm like, hey man, there's a sign for Crittenden. I'm like, I know all about this place. And, like I said, we did the work there. I think there's if I remember correctly, there's you're down on the bottom, the road going into Crittenden, like in the countryside. And I think the freeway runs across the top of it. And then you go up the hill and it kind of splits. Yeah. And to me, it's
a little
literally
tiny village.
It's farmland.
Yeah.
It's farmland. But I know the story. So it's these
and
things
if you were
can
to
be
see the house, you would never think there would be activity there. So the only way that I do feel that I do have a little bit of liberty to talk about it is that my husband and I actually got to meet Adrian Erickson in person while we were having activity here at our farm. And Adrian took great joy in shocking my husband with the film footage that they captured.
So that was, rumor has it, what was there, 20 some different clips of that footage?
I think we saw over a dozen different clips.
Okay.
I don't know how many they have in total, but like I said, my husband and I did meet Adrian, and it's while we were having activity here at our farm. And Adrian he's an interesting guy, and he took a lot of pleasure in flipping open his computer and blowing my husband's mind by showing him daytime footage. That
What was the most shocking thing that you saw?
The I don't know, most shocking. The most favorite thing that I saw
yeah, absolutely favorite, or I was going to say mind opening.
So they caught some. This is I think it's night vision, if I recall correctly. Night vision footage. It may have been thermal, but at any rate, it's
I think Matt.
Females.
I was say I think Matt at the time, weren't they using the Sony night shot cameras or something, the high 8s with the night shot on them
Yeah, I'm not sure, but this is whatever
so anyway,
Adrian supplied.
Probably irrelevant. Russ is looking at me like, just move on, Dad.
So
anyway, go ahead.
So one of the clips that Adrian showed us was 2 females that walked down through, and it was not at the original site. It was, so when Adrian went in, and he told us he bought this lady's property from her, and he intended to take over and put a research station there. But she moved only just a few miles away, and within a matter of weeks, they were at her house. So this footage was captured at where she moved to, and it's 2 females, and they're just, you know, when we watch the trackways, it looks like the step 1 foot in front of the other. But getting to see them walk, they rocked from side to side, and they're kind of just happily going down through this sloping field together. And they get down to the end, and they're almost frolicking with each other. And I was just like, oh my goodness. Another piece that he showed us was a very big adult, and you didn't get to see the face in this one, but you could see the body clearly, and it was squatted down in the tree line. It was a russet brown color. Daylight was shining on the hair, and it's obviously hair, not fur. And with arms, I need to get my arms up where you can see them, without pushing off, it came from totally squatted down, like a child can squat and do, hunker down on its heels, and it just stood straight up. And then it turned, and it moved off.
Russ pays a guy $135 a week to yell at him, so he does that in a gym.
Ronie, I have to ask you, are these pictures comparable to the Patterson-Gimlin film that, you know, in 1967, the one everybody knows where Bigfoot's walking along? Do these rival that?
Some of the ones that I saw most definitely do, yeah.
I mean, it's wild.
I don't think anybody would watch it and not be a believer.
And all of us that have been in Bigfoot for many years have been waiting and waiting and waiting for these to come into public.
And the, you know, as you know, the housing market crashed in 2008, and Adrian was a property development guy, and by 2010 he had abandoned the whole thing. And I don't know his reasoning for all of it. That's not for me to speculate on, but it ended up that in 2012 the property did come up for sale, and one of our, and I don't think it's my place to say who bought it, but one of our fellow BFRO people bought it. And I don't think it's any secret that Sibylla Irwin moved there from Texas and lived there for a number of years. And I was up there as often as I was able to be there, and had some amazing encounters there, and ended up having a Class A at 40 feet in the daytime.
Wow.
And it was the last experience that I ever had with a visual, and it was what caused me to step away from.
All right, so I'm going to preface this. I myself am a blood and guts, you know, guy. These things are primates of some sort. You know, I know that there's other people out there. You know, Ron Moorhead is going towards the woo. You know,
Tom Powell
is going towards the woo. You know, if anybody doesn't know what woo is, it's like woo woo, you know, it's real, not, I don't know. So paranormal. So
outside of the normal.
right. So
Portals.
I know you, and I've known you for a very long time.
Yes, you have.
And when I heard that what you're going to tell us, I was surprised, but I was not shocked, because I know that you are about as honest and straightforward as people come, period. So with that preface, change my mind.
Okay. I will preface this by saying my dad was a World War II veteran. He flew 50 bombing missions in a B-24 Liberator. And I was raised that my word had to be my bond, that I had to treat people the way I wanted to be treated, and that above all else, I had to be honest and truthful. And I've always been that way. Now, that said, when I started down the world of trying to figure out what on earth Bigfoot was, I started in the camp of it's a great ape. And I rapidly changed my mind. And I experienced just about every type of woo that there is. And what I learned right off was just because I couldn't explain it, it wasn't the correct thing to do to throw it out. I might not know where that piece fit in the puzzle, but I had to hold on to it and see if it repeated itself. And I had to be open-minded enough to see that if it would fit at some point. And what I found was that over all these years, the puzzle got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Now, I've heard, you know, people, you know, they go into an area or something like that, and they have a feeling. Well, I have a feeling, and it was telling me to leave. Well, is it really telling you to leave, or are you just afraid? You know, because that does happen. I mean, so you kind of got to look at it and say, okay, were you afraid and you just want to leave, and you just want to say, okay, well, something was telling me to leave? Because I've heard that from several people.
Or
is there something there? Do what?
Your sixth sense.
Yeah,
you know, that we've lost over the years, that our forefathers had when they're in the woods, and we go in and we feel like something's watching us and we shouldn't go a certain way.
Right. So I was going to say, so you were at the site. I think you were there with the owner. Was this chili day? Is this the story with the chili?
Yes. So Sevilla was living there, and the owner was there, and her son was there, and I was there. And do you want me to just give you a brief history of the 4 encounters that I've had?
Absolutely.
So the very first one I ever had was the furthest distance, and it scared the hell out of me. And I saw no detail whatsoever. I was at Turkey Foot Campground in the Daniel Boone National Forest, researching there to see if we could hold a Kentucky expedition there, because Matt had asked us to lead a first ever Kentucky expedition. And Jay Combs, who was an investigator at the time, had talked to the ranger there.
He was a correctional officer, wasn't he? Is that Jay?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Worked with troubled kids.
Yeah.
And he had talked to a ranger, and the ranger said, don't ask me if I've seen anything. Don't ask me if I've heard anything, but here's where you need to go. And Jay had gone where this guy had suggested, and he had gone out the road. Turkey Foot Campground was a seasonal campground, primitive camping, a vault toilet, no water, no electricity. Jay had gone through the campground and on out the road that the ranger suggested he go out. He got to where he wanted to go, and he stepped off his four-wheeler and shut it off, and he got screamed at very close distance. And I mean, big time screamed at. So we were there. We set to be there the weekend that it opened. And when I pulled in, it was after dark. And I was, the 2 Kentucky guys, Jack Smarr and Mark Carney, were there ahead of me. They had reserved us a site. They had popped their tent up. I had my daughter-in-law with me. we all go to bed. I slept in the back. My daughter-in-law popped a tent up, and I slept in the back of my Xterra. And I wake up in the morning, and I'm looking up on a hill. We're in a deep bowl basin. I didn't know what the terrain was when we pulled in at night. And I'm looking up on this hill, and I'm looking at what looks like a giant figure, hunkered down. Massive head, big broad shoulders, and arms. And I'm thinking, that's got to be a tree trunk. It's got to be a tree trunk. And I'm staring at it, and I'm staring at it, and I hear Mark and Jack stirring, and I know they're going to have to walk behind my Xterra to go to the vault toilet. And so I'm intent on looking at this thing because I think it's going to move its head if it's what I think it is when they walk by. Each of them walks by. I never take my eyes off from it. They each come back. I'm like, okay, it's a tree trunk. Stump, burned up, whatever. It was darker than anything else on the hillside, and it was more massive in girth, but I'm thinking it's a tree trunk. So I roll back over for a few minutes, and I look back, and it's gone. And for whatever reason, it's that first reality of, holy cow, I've actually seen something.
You know what they say, right? If you see one, never take your eyes off of it.
I know, exactly. So the minute I rolled over, it was gone. So I called Jack over, and Jack is retired military, and I was able to stay where I was and direct him to it. We measured the distance, 225 yards, and he found there was an old dug road that circumvented the hill, and he found deep heel prints right where I had seen it. So no way to tell the size, but that was the first, and that just, for whatever reason, that shook me. It just scared the hell out of me. It was obviously a very large adult. So next thing is when we're moving Sibylla into Crittenden, and she and I have to go to town because there's electrical issues and there's plumbing issues, and we go to get supplies. And we're driving back, and I glance up in my rearview mirror, and there's a juvenile crawling across the road behind me on its hands and knees. And literally, I'm seeing a head, a torso, hands crawling, and bent legs with feet sticking out behind, and knees, and it's crawling on its hands and knees. And by the time I can get stopped and get backed up, it's gone. Not brief, but I know what I saw. You're not going to convince me I didn't see what I saw. We went back. There was no house there. There was no dogs there. There was nothing there. So that was the second, very brief. Third, I had taken a report, and this is interesting because it's only, as the crow flies, it's only 3 miles from where I'm talking to you right now, over on Percy Priest Lake. I had taken a report from a primitive hiking trail of a family hiking in March of 2013, and they got the typical tree leaner, arm around the tree, and it leans out and looks at them. So in March of 2014, exactly 1 year later, Sibylla was flying back in from Texas, and I picked her up at the airport, and I said, it's March, let's go walk that trail. We've got just enough time before the park closes at sunset. So we go and we start hiking that trail, and for whatever reason, we feel really pulled to go off trail and to go down to the lake edge. And as we're walking down to the lake edge, we encounter a beautiful footprint in a drying up mud puddle. Really crisp, really clear, good footprint. So we're like, okay, we had heard they were there anyway, but this is a good sign. And we hike along the shoreline for over a mile until we come to a place where there's a stream that's coming downhill and spilling into the lake. And we both felt like we needed to walk up that stream. And we got to within sight of the hiking trail. And by that time, I think the last hiker, we had seen them go past us. There was only one car in the parking lot when we got there, and we'd seen the last person go out. So we knew that we're the only people on the trail. So we start up the trail, and you talk about your sixth sense. So this is something that Sibylla and I would do often. And we would do it with various people when we led expeditions. You close your eyes and you cast your feelers out in every direction around you, and you just see if you pick up anything. And whoever opens their eyes first waits politely until the other person opens their eyes, and then you tell each other what you got. Sometimes you get nothing. On many occasions, we would get something. So on this occasion, I opened my eyes first. I wait for Sibylla. She opens hers. I said, "What'd you get?" She said, 12 o'clock. And I said, "I got 11 o'clock. And I said, "Okay, we've got trees right here. There's some limbs down. Do a wood knock." So she does a wood knock, and boom, right back at us from exactly 12 o'clock. So we're standing there, and we can guess that it's about 60, 70 yards from us, we're suspecting. And she happens to be looking to the north. And she said, "Ronie, I just had one lean out from behind a tree up there about 70 yards. I said, "All right, keep your eye on the tree. I'm going to pick up your backpack and your walking stick and your water and all of that." I said, "You walk to that tree." So we walk to the tree. By then, there's nothing there. So we stand, and we're standing shoulder to shoulder. And the first 10 or 15 minutes, she was facing west and I was facing east. Nothing happens. We switch positions, and now I'm facing west and she's facing east, and we're shoulder to shoulder. And we've been together on enough expeditions that if something happens, the other one, whoever is seeing it, the other one's not going to look or move. They're just going to listen. We conditioned ourselves to do that. It's like if you're around a campfire and somebody goes, "Oh, I see something over there." We don't want people to do that. We want them to quietly say, "I'm looking over Russ's shoulder and I see something watching us," and everybody else keeps chilled. So I'm now looking west, and about 10 minutes in and about 40 yards out in front of me, the sun is shining down between two trees that are about 40, 50 feet apart. And I hear a big ruckus start in the underbrush to the right of that opening. And a juvie crawls across the opening on its fingertips and toe tips like Gollum.
That's that spider crawl.
Yeah. Does the spider crawl across the opening, but turns its head away from me as it crosses the opening. And
wow.
Sibylla said, "Are you hearing that?" I said, "I'm watching it. It's a juvenile." And it was going towards where the wood knock had come from.
So wait a second. So do you think by looking away, it believed that if it
I wouldn't
didn't
know
see
what it
you,
was, possibly, yeah.
wow.
That's assumption until one of them talks to us and can tell us. We don't know, but it purposely turned its head away from me as it was creepy. It was on fingertips and toe tips.
You hear that spider crawling commonly, and it freaks everyone out.
It's not pleasant to look at, I'll tell you that.
Wow.
So that was 3. So first one was in 2010, then in 2012, now we're to 2014. So these are spaced 2 years apart. So the big one comes in 2016, and Sibylla is established at the Crittenden site, and I've gone up for the weekend. And on Friday night, her son Nathan cooked us some bratwurst for sandwiches. And not only was it too hot to bite into, but I don't do spice at all. I can't even eat a poblano pepper. These were they were too hot in heat level, but they were also spicy. So I bit into this bratwurst, and I instantly got sick and got really sick. And ended up, I got so sick that I had stomach spasms. So I had been through all of that night, that was Friday night, through all of that night, I had been vomiting just nonstop, and finally got my stomach to settle down enough that I was able to get some sleep. And the next midday, I'm still sleeping on and off. And the three of them are in the kitchen and they decide to cook chili, and the smell makes me nauseous all over again. So I make my way outside. I didn't even take my phone with me. I just hightailed it out the back door. I said, guys, I'm going out for fresh air. The smell's making me ill. So I went out and laid on the grass, and the driveway is rimmed by railroad ties. That's what holds the gravel in the area you park. So I stepped over the railroad tie at the back of the house and stepped out onto the grass, and I laid down on my left side so that the closest neighbor was behind me, and they were the ones that their guest had filed the report that the FRO initially got. And then there was another neighbor out of sight. So it was about 100 feet or more across the yard, and there was a tree finger that came up to the road. They would often cross through there, and I was facing that way. And I had been laying there a while and still kind of had the dry heaves. And they
In the daylight.
In the daylight. This is in September of 2016, and it's about 2 hours before sunset.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, I know I'm being watched. So I lay there very still, and I'm studying those woods because I'm expecting it's going to be in those woods. And it's probably 2 or 3 minutes, which in an instance like this is really actually a very long time that I'm studying those woods. And I know I'm being watched, but I can't see anything. And then all of a sudden, the hair stands up on the back of my neck. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's behind me. And I just rolled over slowly. And as I roll over, it's turning and it's turning away from me. I did not get a clear visual of the face, but I got to see enough. And it's turning, and the right foot is starting to go forward, and the back of the left wrist is raising. And that was one thing that I had noticed in Adrian's films, and he pointed it out. When we walk, as we walk and stride along, our thumb is forward. And I saw it in multiple film clips that he showed my husband and I. When they walk, the back of the wrist comes up first. The hand is bent and the back of the wrist comes up. So I cue in on, boom, I know what I'm seeing because I'm seeing the wrist. I've seen this before. The second thing I cue in on is it has downward sloping shoulders. And I'm going, shoulders are supposed to be big and square and broad. And what was fascinating about that, because that hit me, that was the second thing that hit me. And I later, when I was finally able to talk to Dennis about it a few years later, he knew the individual I was describing.
How far away was this?
40 feet, exactly.
40 feet. Wow.
40 feet.
So.
And then I look at the color. The color is a deep burnt orange. And I spent all that fall looking for a leaf that would match that color. And then it just casually strolls away. But as it's strolling away, I'm getting information from it. And I got to watch it for a good 50 yards before the trees obscured it. And it left in a very slow, casual gliding walk.
All right. So
yes, sir.
Up to this point, I am on board.
Gotcha.
I am on board. This is awesome.
Okay, wait a second. You weren't on board about when they were doing the time where they felt something? Were you okay with that too?
Sometimes, I hear those stories and I just think there's people in the woods that get scared and they just want to leave and they need an excuse. So, like I said, but in defense of those people also, like I said, I've had that experience where I could have looked out a window in a camper that it was being rocked and I just decided that's not for me right now. I'm going to go back to sleep. So anyway, it happens to the best of us. So at this point in time, this thing is walking away and you said it is downloading information to you. So when you say that, is this just coming into your mind? Are you seeing
Yes,
it? Are you just
no,
thinking it?
I'm getting, my mind is getting filled with communication.
Okay. Rapid fire,
No,
or just, okay.
not rapid fire, very deliberate,
Okay.
very measured. The first thing that I got was, it didn't come up out of concern for me. It came up out of curiosity because of the sounds I was making. So I was very clear on that, came up to see what you're doing. But then what I'm getting is, why do you keep seeking us? Why can't you just let us live our lives over and over? And it impacted me so strongly that I knew by the next day. I mean, I stumbled back in the house when it was out of sight. I stumbled back in the house just half shocked, trying to wrap my mind around everything I'd seen, everything that had happened, how big it was, how it moved. And I'm still getting this information. And I walked past them eating at the table, and I said, I just saw a Sasquatch in Lucy's yard. That's the next door neighbor. And I said, I can't talk about it right now. And I went in and I went to sleep.
Wow.
And the next morning, we not only dissected it in great detail, but we reenacted it, because when I first looked at it, I took, from my laying down position, I thought it was about the size of Sibylla and I were both small women. It turned out it was actually about 6 feet tall, when we put someone over there that we could measure against.
Which is probably not a male or a large male, but just maybe a juvenile.
I would say a subadult, and I got the sense, I didn't see any breasts at all. I got the sense it was a male. And I think Dennis kind of verified that he had seen it as a youngster, a young youngster. And he knew the one that was that color with the downward sloping shoulders. He remembered it.
So you get this download, you go to bed, you go to sleep, you wake back up, and you're starting dissecting what had happened.
I didn't share that with anybody for several days, what I had gotten. I just shared the details of what I saw and how it moved. And
so you guys, like I said, you recreated the situation.
Yeah, measured it. Yep. I laid in exactly the same spot. I knew exactly what spot I was laying because there was a stone on, Sibylla put stones along the cross ties. My head was right beside a stone, so I knew exactly where I was.
Okay.
So we measured the distance. It's exactly 40 feet.
Okay. So at this point in time, a couple of days later, you want to look. So actually, at this point in time, you're kind of thinking to yourself, do I listen to him and just leave him alone? Is that what you're thinking?
I'm rolling it around in my mind, and I didn't articulate it to anybody for quite a while. And it was Sibylla, and Sibylla and I are very good friends. Everybody in the Bigfoot world knows that. Close confidants, research partners. It was Sibylla that I initially talked to, and I said, Sibylla, I'm done. I said, I cannot anymore. I can't seek them out anymore. I said, it feels so intrusive to me. It feels rude. It feels just like you have better manners than this. It just felt wrong. It was very powerful. And at that point, it was a couple years later. I just got inactive at that point. I was still, if somebody was troubled or had a scary encounter and they were turned over to me, I was still helping people. But it was, I don't know when I officially, sent my retirement letter in, but, it just came a point that I knew I would never attend another expedition. I knew I would never lead another expedition. I would always be available to help people, but I knew I wasn't going to seek them out anymore.
Okay.
And I actually went into my woods here and just talked out loud. And I took up, I had a feeding area in our woods. I had a gifting area in our woods. I had stones and things that they would move about, and I would move them back, and they'd move them again. I took all of it up, put everything away, just vacated the woods, and just formally said, "Hey, I'm done. I'm, if you come here, you're welcome here. If you want to take shelter in these woods, but I'm done. I'm not seeking you."
Okay. Well,
Wow. So let me ask you this, Ronnie. I mean, you've had these 4 instances or 4 sightings, which is, far more than anyone else really usually ever gets to have happen. Have you alluded to patterns, but I'm curious, like, in retrospect, now that you have done this for many years and dealt with many witnesses, what have you learned about Bigfoot?
Well, I have learned that they are highly, highly intelligent beings that live in family groups, that watch out and care for each other. And I think if you see one, it's highly likely that there are others quite close by, 90% of the time or more. Interestingly, in Crittenden, it was generally the females that were interacting with the humans. In Alabama, it was the male. In other places, it was a male. A male far more often than females, but in Crittenden, it was the females. But they will seek out interaction with us at times, but there are lots of times that they do things to try to get us to move out of their areas, whether it's the fact that they may have young ones there or they're hunting there or whatever. I think they can show amazing restraint as far as the potential for them harming us, if they wanted to, is astounding, but they don't seem to. I mean, look at the young man in Alabama who cornered that old female, and the big male just escorted him back to his house. That showed me amazing restraint. Terrifying encounter for that poor young man that will impact his life from here on out, but it showed amazing restraint. As like you said, I know neither one of you are fans of the woo, but I've seen things. When you opened the first podcast that I was on, you were talking about independent eye glow. Mm-hmm. I saw that on the first expedition I ever attended, and I threw it out because I didn't believe it was possible. But then I kept seeing it over and with other people with me. But the night that I saw it, the entire group saw it on the first expedition I attended. But then in Citico Creek, I've been with a group of people that we watched 2 sets of red eyes across the creek from us stay there for about 15, 20 minutes. But I've also seen light blue and soft white and seen them move and illuminate the leaves around them. How is that possible?
I have absolutely no idea.
But I've seen it.
I believe you. So just because I guess, there's a lot of reports like that out there, and you can't discount what anybody says just because you didn't see it. And I remember Matt talking to somebody one time, and Matt says, let's say you're on a jury and you're sitting there and this guy robbed a bank. They said he robbed a bank. And you didn't see him rob the bank, but 400 people saw him rob the bank. Did he rob the bank? He probably robbed the bank. So I always think about that with Bigfoot. That's a great kind of analogy, is a lot of people don't see it, but there's a lot of people that do. And you've seen it multiple times. I've heard it from multiple people. So obviously there's something to it. I don't know what it is.
How it can be done, I don't have a clue. It does not make sense to me. And I told you when I started the whole journey that I initially thought I was seeking out some sort of North American great ape. And interestingly, my dad from the very beginning, and he called me sis. He said, "Sis, you've got this wrong." He said, "This is some sort of ancient type of people. Maybe not really like us, but he said, this is people behavior. This is not animal behavior."
So that was going to be my next question is, you started this journey thinking it's a great ape. Now you think it's a lost tribe of civilization, lost tribe of humans. I've heard, Russ has had many, many witnesses that said basically, I could have put a bullet in this thing's right between its eyes, but I would be charged with murder. And I've heard that from, several witnesses around the country said the same thing. So that's what you're going to, I guess, that's what you think.
I think they are some type of ancient humanoid of some type. I don't know exactly what. And they have abilities we don't have. Now, have we lost those abilities? That's an interesting question to ponder. Certainly people who live in the wilderness and become very highly attuned to their sixth sense have heightened abilities that the rest of us may not. I've always paid close attention to my sixth sense. It served me well. I've always trusted it, and I think the more you trust it, the more you listen to it, the more you find out that the decision you made was the correct one. You don't always get validation for the decision you made, but when you do get validation, it's pretty powerful.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not such a reach when you think about, like, if, let's say, somebody that doesn't go in the woods a lot goes out in the woods with somebody that's often in the woods, and the person's out there is pointing out all these things like, here's a deer track. Did you just see that deer? That's a gray squirrel. And just by being out there more than others, you pick up on things more than others. So, maybe there's something to that.
My dad had me and my brothers in the woods at every single opportunity. We were taught how to walk in the woods, how to move in the woods, how to be stealthy, how to be quiet. We were taught every animal track, trail, I wish I'd paid better attention. My dad was a naturalist. He knew every tree, every bush, every berry, whether it was edible or not. And I was raised, I didn't hunt. I loved shooting. I didn't hunt, but I went along on it. And I was raised eating venison. I was raised eating squirrel, rabbit, turkey, my goodness, moose, bear meat, you name it. I've been in the wilderness and wilderness camped out west when I lived in Wyoming. I've had to deal with grizzly bears, moose. I've dealt with black bears back here. I've encountered just about everything you can encounter in the wilderness, and learned how to keep my cool while doing it, because I wasn't carrying a weapon for any of it.
Do you think being a female in the woods, like I said, Russ mentioned it early on that you were kind of our East Coast mother figure for what we do, and
okay, I'm old, I get it.
Well, no, I mean, we're all old. Look at this. I got, white hair, for gosh sakes. I need glasses and everything else now. Do you think that was an advantage to you, when you go into the woods that, obviously a big guy like Russ with probably a 6-shooter on his hip, is portrays a certain image in the woods, where you portray a different image?
So one of the things we haven't talked about is zapping or infrasound.
Correct.
I have stood beside 2 people that got zapped while I was, in one instance, 10 foot from them, and in another instance, 15 feet. And nothing happened to me. I've never had that happen. I have had Sasquatch walk up to my tent at night and lean over it and sprinkle things on it and breathe heavily. And I've been pretty scared inside, but I've never been bothered.
Let's
I've
back
never
up
been threatened in any way.
just for a second so that the guests understand. the viewers that some people believe that Bigfoot produces infrasound, which is something that elephants, tigers, lions, and some other mammals
Yes.
will put out in order to either communicate or to stun prey. And so now it's, in the last 10 years, became, I'm not going to say well, I'd say it's a popular belief in Bigfoot community that Bigfoot may do the same thing. Just so people understand, when we're talking about
Yes, exactly. So I think zapping is a horrible term. We certainly need a better term for it. But I've talked to hundreds of people who have had it happen to them. I was standing beside two people that it happened to. I was fascinated enough by it that I took time to go to a military source friend that I had that was active duty military. And I said, I want to know everything you can tell me, because I knew our government was using infrasound. I already was aware of that. It can be used very effectively for crowd control. I said, I want to know about it. I want to know what it does. I want to know how it affects humans. If a person gets hit with infrasound, what happens? And that I did a deep dive into that, and I was asked to speak about it on several occasions. And it's pretty fascinating. And I had, on the QT and on the down low, I had very, very seasoned investigators come to me and tell me that they had literally been taken to the ground by this, ended up with blood in their urine for days, sometimes up to a week or more afterwards, had long-lasting effects that stayed with them for months, and in one instance, over a year.
Wow. I mean, I always felt like, and I'm not saying it's just not possible. I'm just saying that, there's other things that we should go to first. For instance, people aren't used to being in the woods. They're tired because we're up all night, and we're not sleeping well because the guys next to me are snoring every night.
Sure.
And, and it sounds like, in many cases, a normal physiological happening, what you would expect to have with anxiety or a panic attack. But, some of the things are hard to explain and wouldn't be commensurate with that, when you start talking about blood and urine. I hadn't heard that before. That's interesting.
Yeah. And in fact, one of, and I have not asked his permission to give his name, so I'm not going to give his name, but so I was standing beside one woman when she got hit with what I believe is infrasound, and I was standing beside, a few years later, standing beside a very large man. I was about 10 feet in front of him. We were walking out, but he had stopped. We had been researching throughout the evening. We were in the Cherokee National Forest in East Tennessee. We were walking out. It was very casual. We had white lights on. We were laughing, talking, and the main group had gone on ahead of us. And this gentleman had stopped. He was wearing a recorder with a mic clipped to his hat, and it was a very good recorder, and it could pick up in the infrasound range. And for whatever reason, he chose to, as we crossed over a small stream, a culvert ran under the logging road we were on, he chose to do a vocalization, what everybody associates with Bobo Fay, what they call the Ohio howl, that big male blast. Mm-hmm. He chose to do that type of vocalization, and we hadn't walked 50 feet past that, and I heard him go, "Ooh!" Just a big exclamation, expelling of air. And I looked back, and he was leaned over, holding onto his walking stick. And as I watched him, he dropped to his knees. I thought he was having a heart attack. I rushed to his side, and when I touched his arm, his muscles were vesiculating. They were jumping. They were actually vesiculating and jumping. And his respiration was very shallow. I radioed for the team ahead of us because they had Dr. Tom Bruns was with them. He's a pediatric trauma doctor. And I said, get back here. I think this person's having a heart attack. Get back to me ASAP. And when Dr. Tom got there, his pulse was very weak and thready, and his respiration was very shallow. And he did have blood in his urine for a week afterwards. And
Wow.
he had felt the blow hit low in his chest first, and it literally took him to his knees. And I honestly, I didn't know what had happened. I thought heart attack, and then it dawned on me, and I said, have you been zapped? He said, yes. And when he managed to be able to stand, he turned to the woods and he said, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. And I could tell he was very shaken up. Now, here's what's interesting. Monongahela, who is our audio expert, he was able to pick up infrasound at the moment that he got hit. It was caught on that recorder.
Wow. You know, Ronnie, you're one of those people that we could talk to for hours and hours. And the truth is, we have talked to you many, many occasions for hours and hours and hours at night around fires and deep in the woods. But I tell you, you really, you know, we're just so honored that you came on with us to be our first guest.
It was my absolute pleasure, guys. Truly, I love you both dearly. One of the most amazing things about the research community is the wonderful, wonderful friendships that we all got to make, and with the finest people in the world. And, you know, I haven't seen your faces in years, and I could hug both of you. There's that love and affection that still remains to this day.
Thank you.
Well, we appreciate that greatly, Ronnie.
You're very welcome. Thank you for giving me the honor of being your first guest.
Absolutely.
I didn't know what I had to bring to the table.
Well, you brought quite a bit. And we're going to probably be feasting on this for quite a while, actually. Like I said, when Russ and I started doing this, we were thinking about who we were going to bring on. And I said, you know what? There's a lot of people out there that go on a lot of shows. And I would really, really want to get somebody that not everybody's heard the stories, but is absolutely just can mesmerize a crowd, you know. And like I said, I know you've done that around campfires with us before, you know, at night, and it's just amazing stuff. So we greatly appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I think you're giving me way too high a praise. I was very passionate about the topic during all the years that I was involved with it. When I led an expedition, I always tried to be a good host. And when I went on an expedition, I always tried to be a good helper and participant. And I always was there to learn. I wanted to keep my mind open and keep learning.
Wow.
Great. All right, Ronnie.
Hey, to all the listeners, you know, we appreciate you listening. Please follow Wide Open. You can go to the Unwell Radio Network on YouTube and watch it live. Well, not live, but you can watch it, see our smiling faces do this. Or you can just go to Apple or Spotify or your normal podcast places and pick it up there.
Great.
We appreciate it.
All right,
Thank
guys.
you very much, guys. I really enjoyed it.
All right. Rush, got anything else?
No, my friend, take us out of here.
All right, we're done.